Hi, welcome back. Guess what? I was able to get far enough along in the demolition of the bathroom upstairs in my house to be able to get an accurate enough measurement to build the base for the smaller cabinet that juts out adjacent to the main vanity. I built it using exactly the same techniques, it's just a little narrower and a little bit longer. But you can see how this toe kick is going to look down here. I think it's going to be okay. So what's the next step? Maybe build the cabinet sides? No, I'm going to throw you a curve. We're going to do the face frame first. So let's get going. Now I'm going to make the face frame on these vanity cabinets out of walnut. And I started off with a piece of 8/4 inch stock. Actually, this is a really bad end of that very stock that I cut off. And you can see it's a little rough. It's kind of hard to tell what I even had. But I went ahead and jointed one face of that piece of wood. Then I ran it through the planer and got the other side flat and coplanar with the first side. I then drew a line down and resawed it in half. So I wound up with two pieces that were about 7/8 of an inch thick. I then went back to the planer and got those down to just a smidge over 3/4 of an inch. And this is what the boards sort of looked like. I then went and jointed one edge so I'd be ready to go to the table saw, and we're ready to make face frame parts now. But before we do that, I just want to show you a little trick for marking out on dark woods. Let's take a look at that. Unfortunately, when you try to make a pencil mark down here to mark a resaw line, it really doesn't show on this dark walnut. But if you just rub chalk, wow, you can really see those planar joiner marks. Rub that in and then take and mark your pencil line, and it'll show up because of the chalk. And then of course, as soon as you sand that a little bit, that chalk will just go right away. Slick, huh? All right, now overall, the face frame is 48¼ inches long. Now the cabinet body is going to be 48 inches, but I want a 1/8 inch reveal over here on this side and a 1/8 inch ability to scribe on this side that's going up against the wall. Now I'm building that wall, so it'll of course be perfect. But if I've got a little bit of ability to scribe there, it might be helpful. Now I'm using 1 3/4 inch rails across the top and 1½ inch rails in the field and 1½ inch stiles. Everything except the bottom rail, which is 1 inch. I'll have 2 cabinet doors here under the sink. This will be a false front there where the sink is located. 2 drawers here and 1 small door here and 2 matching drawers over here on this side above the second cabinet piece, which is coming out at a right angle to this cabinet. And this dotted line is where that small cabinet will be pushed up against this cabinet, forming the right angle. All right, I'm cutting my rail stock to length now. I'm just about done, so we can go mock this up and take a look. Well, I always advocate mock assembling or dry assembling something before you cut the final joinery or do the glue up, and I'm sure glad I did. First of all, my drawing was off in one place here. The drawing actually showed this bottom rail being solid, but in my cut list, I had cut all of these stiles the same length because they really should go through all the way to the bottom. So these wound up being individual pieces down here. That's not a big deal. The big problem was right in here. Now originally I had set this drawer up as 4 3/4 deep, same here, and this as a 8-inch tall drawer, and the same here. But when I mocked it up, I realized that the top of this adjacent cabinet that's coming out would be in the way of this drawer. So what I did was I measured down for the toe kick and measured up to where the top of this cabinet is going to be, and I made it come out to exactly the bottom of this rail. Then when a 3/4 inch top is put on top of this side cabinet, it will come dead center of this rail, leaving room for this drawer to clear as it opens. So always mock these things up and it'll be very helpful. Now I've used some blue painter's tape to mark off where my joints are, and I've numbered all the pieces. So I'm ready to cut domino holes out, and then we'll be ready to glue this up. Well, here's our finished face frame. I think it looks pretty good. What, you think we missed a step? Well, actually we missed a few steps, but not to worry, because now we need to build the face frame for the smaller cabinet that runs perpendicular to the main vanity. So we'll go through the steps quickly for that face frame. All right, so here's the face frame for the smaller cabinet that runs perpendicular to the main vanity. And you can see the overall length is 58 3/4 inches. And you'll notice that I've put a 2-inch stile here on the left end, a 2-inch stile in the middle, and 1 3/4 inches on the right. The reason for the 2-inch stile on the left-hand end is I want that stile to give me a 1/4 inch overhang. The dimensions in the bathroom are such that I need to be a little over, and then I can trim it down to fit perfectly once I get it into place. And the reason for the 2-inch stile in the middle is because I'm going to put doors, 4 doors in here, and they're going to be 1/2 inch overlay. And I want to make sure there's room to open both these doors without them interfering with one another. This dotted line sort of shows where one of the doors will be. Those doors are going to be roughly 13 3/4 inches wide by 13 inches tall, just to give you an idea. Again, we'll use a 1-inch rail at the bottom and 1 3/4 at the top to match the other vanity. So let's go get to work. All right, after all my lumber has been dressed, the first thing that I want to do is rip these to width. Now I've got my jointed edge marked. That's going to go up against the fence, and then after that I'll have a straight edge every time. Now be really careful when ripping this small width stock. Be sure and use a push stick and exercise all caution at the table saw. Next, I'm going to rip my 1 3/4 inch stock, and I had a piece that was left over from the other face frame, so I'm going to try to match that in width exactly so I can use that. All right, now this is the second piece of wood that I ripped. And I could tell as soon as I started ripping it that I wasn't going to be able to use it. And the reason is because as I was ripping it, it was releasing tensions in the wood, and it was closing up behind the riving knife. You can see here exactly what happened. This is where I started the cut, and it just started closing up. There was just too much tension inside the wood, and I'll be able to straighten this out on the joiner and possibly use it someplace else, but I won't be able to use it in this project. All right, I want to show you one more little chalk trick. I love chalk in the shop. It's so handy to have. If you have a piece of wood and you can't remember or forgot to mark which side was jointed or which side was run through the table saw, chalk makes it pretty easy to figure it out. Rub this on here and you can actually see the saw blade marks. If you rub it on the jointed side, you can actually see the jointer knife marks. So it really makes it easy to figure out what the orientation of your wood is. All right, this is my 2-inch stock and I need two pieces 14 3/4 inches long. And what I've done here, I've got this piece, it's got really straight grain right in here, but right about here, it starts to sort of tail off. And it runs really straight up until about right here, and it starts to get a little weird again. So what I did was I made a couple of marks here, 15 or so inches apart, just to make sure that I had enough stock. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice off this end and get rid of that, and then I'll cut my two 14 3/4 inch pieces out of the straightest grain section of this piece of wood. When working on something like a face frame, getting an absolute square assembly is essential. And so for that reason, anytime there are two or more parts, I always use a stop block that assures you of getting exactly the same length on those pieces. Having precisely the same length every time will go a long ways towards helping you have a square assembly. And there we go. Just perfect. All right, so once again, I have mocked up the face frame assembly. I've got it pushed up to a nice straight board. I've got clamped to my outfeed table, and I've got the pieces in place, and I've got the dominoes just laid there just so I had enough to get the job done. You can see that I'm only going to be able to put in one, because if I tried to put in two, they're so close together. I haven't had much luck in doing that, and really one is more than enough. The main reason I'm putting these in is because it will help the registration and make sure that I get these pieces perfectly flush. It'll add some rigidity to the assembly. So we just need to cut our domino slots and we're ready to go. All right, now to cut the dominoes, what I've done is I just whipped up a little jig here. This is all scrap. Took about 5 minutes to put this together. These two pieces here capture the domino machine on either side, and this is a stop to keep it from going forward any further. So it just wedges in there just like that, and it won't move. And then I've got a little fence, and I was pretty careful positioning it, but then when I ran my test, it was a little off center. So I just taped a couple of shims on there. I'm going to put my 1-inch stock in there, and I'm going to drill those 1-inch rails first, and then I'll go and move this stop over and do the 1 3/4 inch rails, and then we'll do the stiles. So we're all set. All right, now I've repositioned this fence and I can cut the domino in the end of these other rails. Just push it up there nice and tight. And there we go. All right, to do these side grain cuts, all you really need is just a backer board. So I'm just using this board that I'm going to use to clamp up the face frame, and just using the cursor line on the domino to position it, and cutting. Kind of shows you how easy the domino is to use since I'm doing it right-handed, and I'm still managing to get by. Barely, but I'm getting by. I'll see if I can keep my hand out of the way so you can see what's going on. That's all there is to it. All right, so I'm ready to glue up now. I've got some wax paper. This is about my 4th glue up for this wax paper. Sorry, Jim, I'm gonna throw it away after this time. I'm gonna put a little glue here, and I've tried this a bunch of different ways, and the way I kinda like to do it is to put a little glue on, and when I smear the glue, smear it towards the hole. And what little bit leaks into that hole is really just enough for the domino. And I'll put a little on the ends here. All right, once you get the clamps on, just make sure that everything is flushed up to your registration board and do the final tightening on your clamps. Make sure everything is flush and even, and you're good to go. So that's it. We're set with our second face frame, and now we're ready for the next phase. And the next phase is to do the ends and the balance of the carcass assembly for both cabinets. And we'll do that in the next video. Remember, we're going to do a tricky sort of decorative panel for the end of the primary vanity, the end that's going to show as soon as you walk in the bathroom. We want to make that really pretty. So look forward to seeing you in the next video, and thank you so much for watching this one.